Thanks everybody for joining. We're very excited to have lunch with you. We miss each other. We miss our community. We're excited to sit down and have lunch on Pacific time, but we know everybody's in Portland and Barbados, and probably all over the world.
Yeah.
So these wonderful speakers introduce themselves in this topic. I present to you Megan Danielson and David Wicks.
Today we'll be going over the sheet mapper impact tools, but we are going to have a whole suite of impact tools hopefully coming out in the future. And they are tools for really everybody, but we've been developing them specifically to meet the needs of our community partners who often have less access to the technical skills needed to develop with our tools. I just want to caveat this by saying that these are not a one-stop shop solutions. We've been developing them specifically to help people as an additional resource. So not everything is baked into this recipe, but we're hoping that this helps people who don't have all the resources that they need to develop. And we've been seeing a lot of use cases for it, specifically this sheet mapper from people who want to map locations of stores, people who want to map emergency supplies. We've even seen people using Google Sheets on their backend for the COVID response. So these are some common use cases that we have, and we wanted to help bring out a solution that was easier for people to start using. I did want to have some caveats out there that there are some limitations of using Google Sheets on your backend. So first and foremost, the limit on the number of rows that you can have in your sheets is a big limitation for this. We also have seen a lot of input errors. If you have a lot of people communicating at once in one sheet, collaborating on that one sheet, there's more room for error for inputting and actually breaking your code. This is also, there are some privacy limitations here. Your Google Sheet will be public. So just know that if you have information that you don't want to be let out to the general public, that it is easy to search for your Google Sheet using this tutorial. And this has been really useful for a number one of our partners. As I said before, during the COVID response, we've seen a lot of people coming together, either large organizations or grassroots organizations, trying to make maps of resources or to kind of map the spread of the virus at this time, and they all used Google Sheets on their back end. So we really wanted to make this to show you what that support looked like in the beginning, but as the global virus continued to spread and this became a pandemic, Google Sheets was not sustainable, thinking about scaling a lot of this information. So our second tutorial, which will be coming out in a few weeks or maybe a month, will show how to get over some of the limitations of Google Sheets, such as the storage and the privacy concerns here. Without further ado, I'll hand it on over to David to do some coding for us, and I'll be answering questions on the Twitch live stream.
Thanks, Megan. So what I'm going to do is walk through basically the steps in the sheet mapper, which you can see actually if on that page itself. We're going to be using Google Sheets to create and store your event data. Text editor, I'm going to be using Glitch because it lets me code in the browser and share that more easily with you all. But if you have an editor like Atom or VS Code, feel free to use that if you want to follow along on your own machine. You will also be using our Mapbox accounts. I'm going to be on my own to create a map style and then get our access token that lets us use Mapbox GLJS with our style. And we're also going to be using Tabletop.js, which is a great library that lets us grab data from a Google Sheet and get it in a relatively easy to use format for our front end. And then if you have a GitHub account, we'll also be using that to publish your map in a publicly accessible way. So because I'm working in Glitch, it's already going to be published, but the GitHub account also provides a way of publishing things no matter what tools you're using. And let's see. I'm sorry, I think I jumped straight to the tools we'll use rather than what we'll cover. Just in my list, I'd scrolled down. So along the way, we're going to be adding location data to a Google Sheet, creating a map document, initializing that map, selecting a style with Studio, connecting the data, and publishing your map. So let's dive into the code. So the first thing you're going to do is grab the sample code, which there's a link from the Sheet Mapper website. And I'm going to, you can also find it on the GitHub repo and just look at the raw source. It's telling me to log into my work account. Okay, which I have now. And the easiest way I found to copy it is to click on the raw button in the top right. And then you can see all the code and copy it. And let's see. So we do that to like create our blank page. I paste that into an editor here. So my editor again, and I hope that the audio is synced up on the Twitch side because I can see it in parallel. And it's a little, the visuals don't match when I'm talking for myself, but I pasted all the code into a blank index.html file in my editor. And if I look at it, I just see a blank gray page right now, which is what we expect because we haven't loaded any of our data or things like that. So the first thing we want to do in terms of like really creating our map is putting data into Google Sheet. So we have an example Google Sheet that you can copy data from, which is what I've done here. And it has the name and address along with the latitude and longitude and some contact information for different food banks in the San Francisco area. And this is what we're going to be pulling in to our map to display. It's important to have the latitude and longitude so we know where to place them on the map. And then all these names in the first row are going to become the keys, the way we identify the data in our web application. So we'll see an entry for each food bank where we'll be able to say, okay, get this food bank's name, it's going to be food runners, and they'll have this latitude, longitude, and contact information. So we've got our data in a Google Sheet that we can pull from. Next, we're going to want to have a style in Studio. So we've created the data and copied the map code. So we're going to want to pick our map style. And we can do that in Studio. And we'll also add our Mapbox access token because these are all in your Mapbox account. So if you don't have a Mapbox account, they are free to set up. And Megan, if you want to talk about any of that, feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, for those of you who don't have a Mapbox account, you will need one of those to get started with our tutorial today. So if you can take a second to sign up, it's free to use. You don't need a credit card to get started. And we did just want to have a little plug for any of our community partners or education partners. If you do think we have a very generous free tier, if you think that you're going to create a tool that goes beyond what our free tier usage is, please do reach out to the community team at Mapbox, and we can help you with help supply you with some discounts.
Cool. Yeah, so when you have your Mapbox account, which you can sign up for at mapbox.com, and you can go into your tokens, and I'm in the edit access token area, so I can easily copy this access token. You can name them, and I've actually restricted this one to just the glitch project where I'm showing it. And that makes sure that anyone who's using it is using it on this web page where I meant for it to be. And so we copy that, and all the places where you need to make changes to the code are labeled with the words "your turn." So it's straightforward to find where you need to be by looking for the places where it says "your turn." If you're a little overwhelmed with all the code, because there's a whole application in here. So I'm going to replace this section with my access token that I just copied from my account. And this is, we're halfway to having a map, where the next half is getting our style from Studio. And so that's in just a different part of Mapbox. And you can get there from the main page by going down to Studio under the products area, or you can also type it into the and type it in, which is what I'm going to do right now, because I'm a little bit confused. So you can type it in to studio.mapbox.com to see all your styles. So you can see I've got a number of styles where I'm just trying different things out. And what's nice is for your organization here, you can start by choosing a template. I'm going to use the basic template, and you can use different color palettes for those. You can also, use an outdoors or monochrome or other templates. And then once you've created your style, you can customize it in a lot of detail. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to do this map quickly and just show these food banks on the map. So what I'm going to do in Studio is, instead of playing with colors and typography, which are all great things you can adjust and customize to maybe emphasize the things that are really important to what you're trying to map. So you can turn off different layers so they don't distract from things, or you can turn on additional things like terrain in order to give more context for what you're looking at. But in the top right of Studio, there's a share button, and that's what we care about right now. So when I hit that, it brings up this modal window that allows me to do a couple things. I can share a link where people can just look at this map that I've created in Studio. But what we want right now is the style URL, which is what lets us tell the GLJS library, our rendering library, what to use for the map. So, and it also helpfully includes our access token there. So in case you're wondering like, hey, where's the account page? You have a default access token set up that you can also grab from Studio. So here, where it says replace with a Mapbox style URL, that's going to be what we just found in Studio. I pasted that in here. Now, when I look at my page, I see my map style. Instead of just a gray background, I can see a nice map of San Francisco.
For those of you who are new to Mapbox and just made an account today, I've actually pasted one of our core styles in the Twitch chat so that you can actually put that in as your style as well. You will need your own Mapbox token, but you can use any one of our core styles. So I just posted our Streets version 11 in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, so if you don't want to do your own custom style, or just it's too many steps right now, it's definitely faster to use one of our default styles that's pre-published. Okay, so now we have a map, and it looks good, but it doesn't show any of our data from the Google Sheet. So we're going to go to the next step. So really, we're following these steps. We're going to connect to the Google Sheet. And that is going to take the form of finding out, what is the sheet ID, which is here. And I think we copy the whole URL. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Megan.
We do. Can we just show them how to publish it really quickly? Because there's two just minor steps. So if you go to File and should be
Publish to the web.
Publish to the web. So this is one of the key steps for using tabletop.js. And you can either choose, so you could have multiple sheets and presumably call on each individual sheet, but we can just say the entire document because there's only one sheet here. Hit publish.
I'm gonna hit publish. Okay. It gives us a little confirmation just in case.
Okay. And then exit out of this.
That's given us a link. Yeah.
We need our share link.
Okay. And then we'll click on share in here, and anyone with the link can view, and we'll copy that link.
So this was the part where we were saying that it has to be public for other people to be able to access the points that we're about to put on our map. So if you don't want your data to be public, this is not the solution for you because this is a default function of using tabletop.js.
Cool. Okay, so we published it. We have the sharing link, and we're gonna paste that into the next place. It says your turn. Which is down inside the tabletop initialization. We'll paste that in. And now we should start seeing icons on our map, which we do. That was a little bit scary for me for a second. But we see our icons loaded on the map with pins for all the food bank locations. And that's being loaded from the Google spreadsheet. So in order to add more information, we need to put more data in our public sheet. Megan, do you know if we have to republish it after we add new information, or does it automatically pull in the addition?
Yeah, it should take in the additional information. It's already published.
Great. So there are lots of ways to figure out where things are on the map in terms of latitude, longitude. What I'm going to use is the Mapbox datasets editor. And I'm just going to poke around in San Francisco to find a place to add. I've already created an empty data set called Sheet Finder, which just lets me poke around. You can also use geojson.io to find latitudes and longitudes of places. And I'm just going to go to the Marin Headlands here. And this is not a food bank, but I'm going to drop a point on the map and just find out where it is, which is written in the top left here. And if I drag it around, it updates that text. So I'm just going to add the Headland Center for the Arts because it's kind of a cool place, and grab their longitude and latitude from the Studio Datasets editor. And I'm going to add that into our spreadsheet of information. So address, I'm going to put unknown on the address. Oops, it didn't copy the text there. I'll try copying it again. And it doesn't like copying the text, so 37.82.
Sometimes if I right click instead of using my keyboard, it copies.
Oh, okay. I will try that for this second number. Copy.
I don't know why.
Yeah, okay, there it is, really tiny. Copied the style too. So hopefully. There we go. Just gonna go with unknown there. And I'm just putting unknown in here so we have something for these different fields. But now that we have the Headland Center for the Arts, we should see a location up here just across on the north side of the bay added to our map when we refresh it. And since that wasn't a code change, it didn't automatically refresh. So you can see that new location is shown up here. And the next part is, hey, we want to add more useful information when people are looking at this map. So it's not just pins on a map, which are cool, but it's things with additional information so people can get involved. For example, food runners and all these others, they have this information that shows up in the pop-up, and you can tell what there's a way to get in touch with them. And you can see that we don't have all of their information located on here, and we're going to address that in just a minute. But here we have their address and phone number, so you can reach out to them. But you might want to have additional information shown in there. That data is also coming from our spreadsheet. And like we said earlier, every one of these rows is going to be coming into our application in a way that we can get properties by the names from these headers. So if I go into our application, you'll see we have a for loop in add points. So this is a for loop here where we say data for each. So that's for each piece of data in our spreadsheet. We're going to process that row. So, and create a pop-up and a marker for the map. So the marker is what we see on the map to begin with, where it is like a pin in this case, and it is located where we specified it. And then we associate a pop-up with extra information with that marker. So when you click on that marker, you get extra information. I see a comment, we don't need to include the edit USP sharing. That is correct. Just clean that up. Yeah, so we are going to take our pop-up and add extra information to it. Okay. And we do that in the set HTML part of the pop-up. So where we can do that is, you can see we've got the row name, the row address in here, and the phone number. So those are all in the text, and you can create this text string in a bunch of different ways. But right now, I'm just going to add another thing that I'm going to call our donation link. And that's going to be another entry in this page. And you can write any HTML you would like for this, because it is setting the HTML of that element. So if you are really confident with CSS and HTML, you can go as far as you want in terms of styling and making really rich context for what you're putting in here. Right now, I'm just gonna take it slow and add a header with some emphasis for our rows dot, sorry, I'm going to give the title first here, donation page. And then I'm going to put the row and look back at our spreadsheet to find out what the name of the variable is. So donate is going to be the HTML. And since that's a link, I'm going to wrap it in an anchor tag so we can make it look a little bit nicer. Href equals donate. I'm just going to, sorry to backtrack a little bit here, but instead of giving it a heading and then content, I'm just going to make the text linkable. So it's going to say donate on the page and show it. And right now we've just created a variable that contains that text. So we want to actually put it into our pop-up here. So I'm going to do that after our phone number. So just add, and you can structure this however you want, but you can just keep adding additional text to the end here. So, and I called it donation link. So I'm going to say add the donation link. And then this should refresh. And when we click on one of these, we should see the word donate, and it should be able to take us to the page. And I'm going to go ahead and share this link with the chat if you want to see the exact page that we're all working on. Yeah, so there you go. We've done all the steps in the sheet mapper right now, except for publishing our stuff using GitHub. I'm just seeing some questions coming in here. So JKT26 asked, how often does the map pull from the sheet? Is it scheduled or when it's updated? So the code that pulls from the spreadsheet runs whenever you load the page. You could set that up to pull at an interval, but it's set up right now. So whenever you initially load it, it runs the tabletop initialization and grabs the content from the spreadsheet.
There's been some questions about styling. So maybe if we could break down, so can the details view get formatted differently with style sheets? As well as some people were talking about row name formatting, which is something that we did pull in here to populate our pop-up. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't follow the row name formatting question, but I can. So
the formatting of the rows, the row names in your sheets, and then calling them to set up your HTML for the pop-up, populating the pop-ups.
Yeah. So in the sheet, it will be case sensitive for the first row. That's where you're going to set the names that you're pulling in the document. So in code, if you've named something because you're working with a team of people and you want the spreadsheet to look good and be readable by people and not just by computers, you can use another syntax for getting properties out of there. Like if you have spaces in the name, like if you called it donation link, in your spreadsheet, you can also access it by using this different syntax. I hope that that's answering the question about
I think
formatting there. So yeah, if I call that donation link, then I can grab it in here by calling it donation link. And this syntax here, this is just like JavaScript text. If you put it inside backticks, it lets you use this $ curly braces to run JavaScript inside of your text, and just saves you from typing as many plus signs. But if you're not as comfortable with that, you can type a couple more plus signs. It's really up to your preference how you want to write these strings. As far as styling it with CSS, you absolutely can. I'm just going to look at our page for a second real quick and see what we've got. I'm going to, the way I like to style things is using the web tools first, because it just lets me see what's happening on the page in the browser. So if I pull up this web tool, it tells me sort of what things are. So you could use the class Mapbox GL Popup content in order to add some property to all of your content in here. Like if we wanted to change the typeface across all of those things, we could set that. Or if we want to try things out on individual elements, we can do that too. So in here, it's like I'm going to select Popup GL content. And right now I'm just going to be editing it directly. Or here we go. Mapbox GL Popup content. You can see the CSS selector is in here. And I'm just going to add a property to this, which it's got this like kind of finicky mouse click handling. Wow, I did not know about the fantasy font family. Let's see if that is actually a thing. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I want it to be.
That was disappointing that it didn't do anything.
Yeah, how I imagine people wrote Game of Thrones or Name of the Wind,
Yeah.
like the world.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's getting ignored because it's being overwritten somewhere. But where is it being overwritten? Okay. Mapbox GL Popup content. I thought that's what we were editing, but apparently there's more than one place where you can edit it. Okay, so it's got this font set. There we go. Now we've got our cursive. So you can make it look as good or as unusual as you want. Yeah, okay, fantasy appears to be papyrus. Which is fine. I think Firefly used that, and so sci-fi fantasy, it's good enough. Yeah, so right, we can edit it in the style editor here, of course, but if you want to control it via CSS, you can do that in your document. And this document has everything in one HTML page to make it easier for you to just like get up and running and go. If you want to separate your CSS out to a separate file, by all means, you can grab the CSS and put it in a separate CSS file and source that. But otherwise, yeah, we can prefer fantasy here to see. Oh no, did glitch fail? Or did it just reject the So I'm having some technical difficulties with seeing my project on Glitch right now. So I'm going to see if I just click show it in a new window. After closing that, it will work again. And if not, I can start up a local machine. Shoot.
Glitch.
Yeah.
It was going so well.
It glitched.
Wasn't Twitch, it was Glitch.
Yeah. But the good news is we were able to show all that code. And for some reason, I'm able to see the code. Yeah, are there other questions we want to dig into here?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of questions about still styling. So changing out the default marker. So we did style it already. We colored it purple. The default is actually blue. But asking if you can replace the markers with icons.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually haven't done that myself. Have you tried that, Megan?
I have, yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. You can
Answer is
replace
yes.
it.
Awesome.
Can replace it with icons.
Cool. Let's see.
And there were some questions back about, is the limitation of this that we are actually just styling points? Could we be using this solution to draw polygons and then shade those polygons accordingly?
Oh, yeah. Is it limited to lat long, or could you do polygons is the question?
Yes.
So I think the main challenge with polygons is going to be entering them in a Google Sheet, because you're going to have to come up with a way that you can define a polygon in here. So that might be something like how we pass shapes to URLs in our different APIs. So like if you've done some more low-level programming with Mapbox, you may have done this, like if you made a directions request. But the main difficulty there would be like, okay, so we create a polygon thing, you would need to have some system for figuring out which vertices are which. So you'd probably do like a longitude latitude pair, -122, 33, and then we usually do a semicolon to separate things. So you could definitely do this. And yeah, like you can definitely do it, but it's going to become, I think, increasingly difficult to read what's going on in the spreadsheet. But yeah, if you have polygons, you can absolutely do that. And I think using semicolons as your separator would be a good approach. And if this glitch page works again, I would love that.
Somebody said, try to open it with a private browser. The map is loading.
The map is loading for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's just me who's a spammer and cannot be.
Also, I do see some questions on here about good alternatives. Thinking about some of the limitations that we discussed with Google Sheets. Are there any alternatives that you would offer up right now? We're also going to be developing a more advanced solution to address some of the limitations that we outlined at the top of this tutorial.
Yeah, so if you're more comfortable with programming, then you might already be imagining how you could do this, where you see we're doing a for loop through a JavaScript object on response to loading the data from tabletop. You can probably imagine that you could have a script that you run periodically that basically does just the tabletop part and says like, hey, grab all the data from my spreadsheet once a day and save it into a JavaScript file that just has the data that I care about. And then that way you'd be able to scale very easily because it's just another flat file that you can store on your server. And as Megan said, we'll be sharing a script to basically do that. in the future.
Yeah. And then there was just some questions about how we are centering the map view.
Yeah, and I see that Zakeo and Flight Wizard are already offering help in there, which is awesome. Apologies if I'm reading your display name incorrectly. But since we can still look at the code here, I did not have luck with the private window, unfortunately. But since we can still look at the code here, you can see that we create a new Mapbox map in our code, and we tell it a couple different things. In addition to the style, we tell it where to put it on the page, which looks for an HTML element with that ID of that name. So you can see up higher, we've got a div with the ID of map. And here we say the container is map. And then you can set the starting, center, and zoom level. And we're doing a transform request here, which you don't have to do, but we really appreciate it if you use it for your project, because it just lets us know that, hey, someone's using the sheet mapper to get started with their project. And I really like that. I'm not sure how our management evaluates these things, but I think it helps us make the case that these are worth doing, and we can do more of them if we get numbers that show people did it. So thank you for keeping that if you do.
Great. And I think there was a question a while back, and I know that we can't see the map, but we had discussed this even before the tutorial about, instead of just adding text information, could we possibly add an image into our pop-up or onto our map?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna try to do it. I'm gonna code it in here and then copy it over to my local machine and open that up in my browser. So I can have just like the local HTML running, which should be fine. So image, and you can also, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you probably know that, like, hey, you can check if something exists. So you can say if the row has an image, saying like if the row has an image, then we're going to do something with that image. And I'm going to take this opportunity to break this into a couple different lines so that it's a little bit easier for me to manipulate. So if the row is an image, so we're gonna start by saying var popup text is just what we're putting in the popup, and we're gonna set it to. So all we're doing here is creating one level of indirection in the code, where instead of saying directly, this is what the pop-up text is, we're defining it first and then adding things to it. So people with sharp eyes may have noticed the bug there. Using the donation link before it existed. So instead, I'm going to say we add the donation link, and then if there's an image, which I'm going to stick with the naming format we had for the other stuff. If there's an image, we are going to pull in the image from that row and add it to our pop-up text. So pop-up text, this lets us just run JavaScript inside of our strings. So we can create image source. Create an image in there, and we'll give it some alt text, which could also be provided in your spreadsheet if you have meaningful alt text. Or we can put in some default alt text, which is what I'll do here. So image of okay, so by adding just an image tag to the HTML, because it is HTML, you can add sort of any kind of content you'd like. So now it's going to be important to actually have an image tag. Confirm that this doesn't actually work right now. So glad we have a backup. I'm going to save this as HTML. Okay, and I'm going to reveal this in Finder. One nice thing also about having everything in one file is you can just drag that file into your browser and it'll work. Where if you have some relative links, it can cause issues. So the map isn't loading for me because I set up that domain restricted access token to be like, it should only work on glitch.com. So something to be aware of is if you're doing local development, I'm going to grab one of my other access tokens that has more generous permission. And I'm going to update here. So if you're like, hey, why is my map not loading? That's so weird. I've got my pins and everything. It could be that you don't have an access token with permission anymore, because you can change your default access token. And if I look at the developer console on here, we should see an error. Yeah, hey, you got 403 forbidden. You're not allowed to do this stuff. And, so if you're missing your map, you might just have an expired access token or things like that, or a domain restricted one. So I just changed that out for my other one, and you can see it here. This is just locally on my machine now, since I don't know why I'm not able to access the glitch one. And we're gonna wrap up in just a few minutes here. I'm seeing the candle in the back. But I'm going to keep looking at this image thing. But Megan, are there other questions that you think we can answer?
It's just going back. Somebody was asking again about changing the color of the pin, and I was going to answer that in the chat. Cool. And I think some people would be interested, because this code is a little bit of a variation on what we actually have in our sheet mapper solution, if we could share your actual final code with our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the final code, all the glitch projects, at least so far, are all totally public. So you'll be able to load this exact page, and I'll share that link here in just a minute. I'm going to pull up that image link that.
There's also a specific question about, this is using Google Sheets, and just clarifying if this can or cannot be done offline with Mapbox, Atlas, and Excel. Oh,
that's a really good question. So the only thing that's specific to Google Sheets about this is using tabletop.js. So if you have your own spreadsheet, you could export it as a CSV file and load that in as well. You'd need to swap out the data loading part, but it's definitely possible to load a CSV that you publish from Excel into a Mapbox map. Somebody's probably written an Excel spreadsheet loader for JavaScript, but I'm very comfortable saying you can load a CSV.
Yeah, I think we chose this solution, especially for people who are making maps online, was that a lot of our community partners actually use Google Sheets to collaborate, which is not something that you can obviously do with your spreadsheet in that way.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, I had a link to an image, but.
I can, do you need me to send it to you again?
I think I found it. Yeah, it's just in a different window. So let's see. Let's see. Got this image in Google Drive, and I think there's a way to share it that lets other people just view the source image. But I'm not seeing it offhand. What you are going to want to do though is, if you have a URL, you paste it into your spreadsheet, and then see if I can just load a favicon. I do have a favicon there. Okay. So any image URL, any image that you have hosted on the internet, you should be able to paste in that to your page. And then if you're able to load the page, you can see there's a little bit of text there, and I've got an errant quotation mark in my code.
That's cute.
But you can see there is a tiny image on that page, and that, yeah, anything you can put on an HTML page, you can put in there.
And then adjust some of the styling aspects of it in terms of the size using CSS.
Exactly.
Great. And there are some questions. I actually don't know the answer. Does a Mapbox Discord exist?
I don't think we have an official Discord.
Oh,
Dom
answered that. No, we don't currently have a Discord that we host. Thank you for tuning in.
I got it. I turned your background music up too, just as a time warning.
Oh,
Cool.
we need a Zoom hook to pull us out.
This has been super fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Megan, for making this amazing tool and guide for people.
Thank you, David, for being our guinea pig and, and helping to answer some questions. And thank you all who ended up joining. We really appreciate getting your feedback on this. And if you did make a map today, and you have a Twitter account or social media account that you would love to tweet at us, put it on Instagram. I feel like an old person. I can't remember what social media accounts exist out there because I don't really have any of them. But feel free to @Mapbox to let us know that you enjoyed the session and to show off what you made today.